Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Julie Lawson. I am the director of the Mayor's Office of the Clean City in Washington, D.C. I'm recording this this afternoon in order to redo the webinar that we ran last night for our Adopt a Block volunteers to make sure that all of the information is clear and audible. I apologize for audio problems last night, and I hope that you'll tune in again to catch everything and learn a little bit more about the behavior of littering. I want to start off with the announcements that we ran through last night. To begin with, as you know, last week, Mayor Bowser announced rollbacks to our phase 2 posture in response to the COVID public health emergency. You can find all the information about where the operations and health guidance at coronavirus.dc.gov. We will bring it up right here, especially if you go to the tab called Phase 2. It will explain the changes, sending office workers back into telework, reducing limits for outdoor gatherings and indoor gatherings, new regulations for restaurant operations specifically related to alcohol sales and consumption, which now must end at 10 p.m., and reduction of indoor capacity, starting on December 14th, going from 50% to 25%. It also reduces the capacity at houses of worship from 100 people to 50 people with a maximum number of 50% capacity. We'll keep an eye on all of these as the case numbers change over the holidays. Remember that if you are traveling anywhere outside of the district, Maryland or Virginia, you need to or Hawaii is the current low-risk state. You have to quarantine for 2 weeks upon your return, or demonstrate a negative test 3 to 5 days after your return. Then finally, we also want to remind everyone that campaign signs. Let's try that again. Last night we got all the way through the webinar without any dog barking. We'll try this one more time. Reminder that the November election was almost 30 days ago, which means that all campaign signs need to be down by Thursday, or else the campaigns are subject to fines for keeping up illegal signs. Anyone can take the signs down. It doesn't just have to be the campaign. So if you're a volunteer or just out walking, please feel free to take down those signs and dispose of them properly. Next up, I wanted to mention that today, December 1st, is World AIDS Day. You can participate in an online celebration tonight at 7 o'clock. You can learn more at our Mayor's Office of LGBTQ Affairs, which you can reach at communityaffairs.dc.gov. And finally, Serve DC and the Office of Volunteerism and Partnerships is putting together the 2020 Spirit of Service Awards. This is a great opportunity to honor members of our community who've done great work in serving in public service and in community service. Nominations are open right now and will close on Thursday, December 3rd. You can find out that information at communityaffairs.dc.gov/servedc. That is it for the announcements. Now we're going to move into our PowerPoint. So what we heard last night, we wanted to talk about the behavior of littering. Last month, as you know, we had a session with Deputy Mayor Dr. Roger Mitchell to talk about the connection between litter and trash in our neighborhoods and blight and public safety and opportunities that we have to strengthen communities and make people safer by cleaning up. Let's try this again. So on last month's webinar with our Adopt a Block volunteers, we met with Deputy Mayor for Public Safety and Justice, Dr. Roger Mitchell, and we spoke about the relationship between public blight, litter, vacant properties with public safety, and ways that working together to clean up our neighborhoods can not only strengthen the community of those neighborhoods, but make everyone safer and reduce violence. And a future partnership that we hope to have working with Bill's team on ways to help reduce violence and prevent violence in certain neighborhoods of the city. So with that, we wanted to dive a little bit deeper into why people litter and the thinking and behavior of it, and some of the interventions that we've tried separate from public safety in order to reduce the amount of trash that's in our neighborhoods, but also in our waterways. So I'm going to back up a little bit to talk about my background and how I got into this and how we understand trash as a regulatory problem, a pollution problem, and a quality of life problem. So I only start on this work in the mid-2000s, working with the Surfrider Foundation as a volunteer. Surfrider was founded by surfers in California in 1984 to keep the water clean and the beaches open so that they could safely surf. It's grown to a network of chapters across the country that do work in their local waterways. DC has a robust chapter working to clean up the Anacostia and Potomac rivers through volunteers. I was the chair of that chapter in the late 2000s, including in 2009 when we supported the Anacostia River Cleanup and Protection Act, better known as the DC 5-cent bag fee, which has had tremendous success in reducing the amount of plastic bag litter in our rivers and neighborhoods, and has been replicated across the country. That work I then really applied to understanding what does that mean for our waterways. We have, obviously the district is sitting on 2 rivers, and we really are thinking about what is the meaning of a watershed. A watershed is the land where all the water that falls on it goes into the receiving water body. So in DC, we have 2 sub-watersheds, Rock Creek watershed and the Anacostia watershed, that both feed into the Potomac River. The Potomac River watershed flows into the Chesapeake Bay, and the Chesapeake Bay watershed encompasses 6 states, as well as the District of Columbia. The Anacostia watershed is not just in DC, but it's also in Montgomery and Prince George's counties, as the headwaters of the river start up by the inter-county connector in Montgomery County. Given that, in 2008, the US EPA declared the Anacostia River impaired for trash under the Clean Water Act. This was a novel response to pollution in the river. It was only the 2nd river in the country to have this designation. Normally, we would declare a river impaired. We would declare water quality impaired for things like bacteria or nutrients like phosphorus and nitrogen. And in this case, the trash was actually making it hard to use the river for its intended purposes, or its most practical purposes, navigation and recreation, because of the amount of trash floating on the surface and even debris on the bottom that made wading impossible. All 3 local governments in the Anacostia watershed have to meet annual goals for removal and prevention of trash entering the waterway. And all of that data is important to capture through all of the activities that the government and then also nonprofit and community partners are doing each year. This data is collected significantly, even to set up that regulation, based on trash trap collections on the Anacostia. This is one of the first trash traps that the district installed. It was built by a scientist at the Anacostia Watershed Society, and it is in Nash Run, which feeds into the Kenilworth Aquatic Gardens in Ward 7. There are now 9 trash traps across the Anacostia watershed in DC, and they're cleaned out on average on a monthly basis, and the trash is sorted and counted for how much it's collecting. On average, month to month, trash in the Anacostia is 80% from food packaging, bottles and cans, utensils and plates, plastic bags, and styrofoam. We've seen significant decreases in the plastic bags and styrofoam now that we have regulation in place, particularly in styrofoam across the entire Anacostia watershed and in bags in DC and Montgomery County. collecting all of this data is really important as we think about the intervention and how do we encourage people to stop using these products or to better control these products so that they don't get loose into the environment and become litter and trash pollution. In 2010, the Alice Ferguson Foundation, which is a nonprofit in Prince George's County that runs the Trash Free Potomac Watershed Initiative, worked with DC Department of Energy and Environment, as well as other local governments across Northern Virginia and Maryland, to understand the behavior of littering. If you are a diehard anti-litter person, it can be really hard to put together a campaign that gets to people who do litter because our mindsets are just in very different places. So using techniques and protocols from a concept called community-based social marketing, the Alice Ferguson Foundation researchers did a lot of work to understand the audience, who litters and why do they do it. So community-based social marketing relies on really understanding the benefits, the barriers and motivations of your audience, and then the benefits that they have to adopting a pro-social behavior. It's basically the same concept as traditional commercial marketing, understanding what's going to make people adopt this behavior or buy the product, and then getting the message and the product and the behavior to them as easily as possible to help them fold it into their lives. So the same way that you would go to the grocery store and a new product is on the end cap and it's on sale, and so it's motivating you to pick it up and get it in your cart and take it home. The same idea of how can we make it as easy as possible and as beneficial as possible to people to stop littering or to reduce the amount of litter in their community. So Alice Ferguson Foundation did phone surveys to understand the impact of litter in neighborhoods and people's perceptions of the quality of our rivers and our recreation spaces in the district. From that information, they recruited people to focus groups, small groups, to talk about their own experiences more in depth in their neighborhoods and their interactions with litter and their perceptions of litter. And finally, of the people who identified as people who litter on a regular basis, they actually did more deep dives with those individuals using psychoanalysis to understand what was really causing it, what's behind it, and what behaviors spur that sort of action for them. And then we designed an ad campaign around it, putting the ads, which we would call prompts, in places where people were most likely to see it. There was also an education effort in rec centers and schools and support for neighborhood cleanups. So what did they find in this research? They found that depending on how you define littering, the population that litters is as low as 5%, possibly even less than that. That a lot of people will admit to dropping a fruit peel on the ground. If you count that as litter, your number goes up. But in terms of the people who will admit to or will say that they will throw a wrapper on the ground, or even in observational studies, the number of people who will drop litter on the ground, durable litter, gets down to about 5%. So we're talking about a really small number of people relative to the rest of the population. Those people are generally feeling really disconnected from their community. They often feel like the society's done them wrong, and they're feeling a lot of internal stress and lack of control in their own lives. So they're really going to exert the limited amount of control that they feel in as small a space as they can. Their house, their car, and everything outside of that is somebody else's problem, even aggressively so, because society has done them wrong. And at the same time, they know that it's wrong. They know that littering is wrong, but they also don't think they're going to get caught. So when they're feeling put upon by the society around them, this is a way to get back and say, I got, screw you, I'm taking care of this myself. I don't need this in my car. Somebody else can take care of it. This is not my problem. it backs up a little bit where people are concerned about kids' exposure to it. They think that trash in the water is extra filthy. They think that the trash itself, they don't want to be exposed to pollution. They don't want to be exposed to bacteria or toxic chemicals. But as long as it's outside of their immediate space that they consider their control zone, it's not their problem anymore. They also don't think that it really is that meaningful. They think, yes, it's a rebellious act, but it's not that big a deal. It's one cup, it's one wrapper. They'll crumple up the wrapper before throwing it down to make it smaller. They'll set something down instead of throwing it. They'll hide it, maybe put it under the bench of a bus stop instead of on top of the bench, or tuck it behind a bush or in a bush. And they'll, we also always see someone who's taken the trouble to clean out their car, they put it in a bag, they'll even tie a bow on the bag and then leave it on the street. To them, they took care of it. To the rest of us, we know what happens to it after that, and we wish that they would have just put it in a trash can, taken that extra step. But that's as far as they can get with their stress level, their lack of control, and their resentment to the society around them. So we're talking about 5% of people doing this, and how do we reach them? So using all of that research, we did say, like, this is going to come back and get you. The litter is going to come close to home, and it does add up, and it is potentially at risk for your kids. So these ads were placed in bus shelters. They're still on trash trucks in Tacoma Park, Maryland. They were put in utility bills and tax forms, and on buses and throughout the Metro DC area about 5 to 7 years ago. And you still see them around a little bit. Alice Ferguson Foundation continues to do work through schools and communities, primarily in DC and Prince George's County. And you can still request signs from them if you are interested in partnering with them in your neighborhood. I'll also add that, I was doing work with Surfrider as a volunteer. And at the time I was running a small marketing and design studio, and it was my design studio that put these ads together based on all of that research. So I was still not yet fully working in the trash space, but I was getting my feet wet, so to speak, in trash behavior and trash communications. In 2010, after that campaign launched, I founded an organization called Trash Free Maryland that brings organizations and individuals and lawmakers together to change policy and behavior to reduce trash pollution in our neighborhoods and waterways. That organization continues today and is still responsible for many of our styrofoam bans, straw bans, balloon bans, recycling policy, illegal dumping policy, and other work across Maryland. It has also, of course, had influence on DC as well. Urge you to check them out for some great ideas. So through all of that work, like I said, I founded that in 2010 and it's now 2020. I've spent a lot of time thinking about our messaging about no littering. When we understand that our audience that we're trying to reach is so small, 5%, and they're people who are already disconnected from society and they're not motivated by doing better for their community. They're not motivated by community spirit and neighborly connection that way. They already know that it's illegal and that there are, in theory, fines, but the realistic side, we don't have police out fining people for littering on a regular basis. So they're right, they're not gonna get caught. I think in these days, we don't want a lot of police out fining people for it. And so how effective is the idea of don't litter? There's another concept in social marketing called social norm, and you want to try to establish a social norm. I've wondered if by saying don't litter, we're assuming that the act of littering is the norm and we're trying to undo it, as opposed to saying that's not normal anyway, and let's find a different way to talk about litter that doesn't say that we're going to take something that we like, littering, we love littering, and back away from it and try to do something else. Or if we're not trying to teach people to take the trash already in their hands and put it in the can so much, because we're talking to people who are not going to be receptive to a community message. So we also know that the trash on the ground doesn't always come just from someone who dropped it. These are both examples of where litter is definitely going to come from, but all of these people thought that they were doing the right thing. I put it in the trash can. I put it next to the trash can so it gets picked up. It's going to blow out. Animals will get into it. And it still qualifies as trash pollution, even though they thought they were doing the right thing. How do we message that? We can say, don't overflow the trash can, but again, we had them doing the right thing in theory. So we know that litter is coming from a lot of different places, not just people dropping it. It's also coming from blowing out of vehicles or blowing out of a regular trash can, that's not even overflowing. One reason that we remind people to keep the lids on their residential cans closed. We also know that where there is trash, more trash arrives. This is an alley in Parkview, and from November 9th on the left and then November 30th on the right. The longer all of this illegally dumped material sits there, the more is going to add to it. People will think, well, it's already here. I'm not doing anything wrong by adding more. And this is how you end up with persistent bad corners in your alleys and in your neighborhoods. And I know you all can name dozens of these places off the top of your head that just continue to attract this. So this got me working on what does it mean to shift people from don't litter message to pick up litter message? What if we focused on removing the blight instead of preventing it? Can we prevent it by removing it? When I was working in Maryland, my organization understood that there were dozens of other organizations, people, city agencies that were all working to reduce the amount of trash on the streets and in the waterways. But to the outsider, it didn't seem like there was any coordination among those groups. And maybe one or two seemed to be the most prominent, most common, and all the other work was ignored, and people thought that nothing was really happening. So we really started to encourage organizations to start to brand consistently across all of their work. Everybody, if you're working on this, slap this logo on your flyers, just so that outsiders start to see that this work is happening broadly and that it is coordinated. And we do talk to each other from time to time. This also led to doing some work to really hone in on the message idea of can we get people to pick up and revisit the questions of why people are littering and what trash means to people's quality of life in Baltimore. We ran a series of focus groups in Baltimore to home in on these messages and really get the sense from residents and workers about their sense of the impact of trash on their quality of life. One of our projects was at the Port of Baltimore, which is on Baltimore Harbor, of course, the Patapsco River. And we moved a little bit away from the idea of picking up, because on the port grounds, it's dangerous to get out of your car and pick up trash. Everything on the port grounds is huge, way beyond human scale. A single Gatorade bottle on the ground is basically invisible among stacks of cargo containers and enormous cargo ships in the water. But we also, given that, we knew that people commonly did throw their stuff on the ground because what was the big deal? However, it is a port, it's on the water, and that trash was blowing straight off the pavement and into the water, causing the port to become a pretty significant contributor to trash in the Patapsco River. So we worked with one of the leaseholders on the port. Their workers use cars to drive around their space as they scan cars in from off the ship onto car carriers out to dealerships across the country. And so they're driving around all day. It's hot or it's very cold. They're relying a lot on bottled beverages and packaged snacks to sustain them through the day. We did several different interventions with them. First, we installed compacting trash cans at key places around their space. We gave each car litter bags, plastic bags that they could put their trash in, with stickers inside the car and on the back of the car, so that both if you were in it or you were seeing the car pass, you were reminded to take your trash and put it in the bag. And then you'd pass by one of those compacting trash cans and dispose of the bag. We put information up in their lunchrooms and LED signs as they were driving around. And then even better, the company identified a handful of workers who were enthusiastic about this, and in exchange for talking about it with their peers, their own colleagues, on Fridays they could break uniform and wear a shirt, designating them sort of as evangelists for this project. And so it was a sort of positive peer pressure. You're a respected person in my life, a coworker, and you're reminding me to make sure that I take care of my trash and I throw it away properly and don't let it lay on the ground. So that was a really fun and effective tool to help get that message across. The other thing that we learned in working with the port was that there's also trucks, semi trucks coming in and out, delivering goods or taking goods away. These truck drivers have often been on the road for several days, consuming a lot of convenience foods, and their cabs are full of trash. They had a tendency to get onto the port and just open the door and sweep everything in the cab out onto the ground, again, because it looks so small relative to everything around them. In order to get into or out of the port, they have to stop at a security gate. At the security gate, we had them give the litter bag to the trucker and remind them to clean out all the trash in their cab into the bag. At the exit gate, we put a dumpster in so that they could just drop the bag in the dumpster on their way out. They had to stop anyway. And that meant that they didn't have to get out and go interact with a separate can. They didn't have to disrupt the flow of their normal work, but they still were able to throw trash away in a way that was better for everybody on the port, and as well as the water nearby. So that was just an easy way of structural intervention to educate people about their proper disposal, trying to make it, again, as easy as possible for people to do the right thing and establish this social norm. The focus groups also showed us the motivation of Baltimore residents to build strong connections, especially most powerfully by people who've been through a lot of personal challenges. Our focus groups, I think they recruited a really interesting cross-section of people from Baltimore. In Baltimore, 60% of people either personally have grappled with an opioid addiction, or someone very close to them, a close relative or friend, has. 60%. So there's a lot of personal experience with substance use disorder in Baltimore. We also had a number of people participating who had experienced incarceration, homelessness, extended unemployment, sex work, and were really grappling with a lot of life challenges. However, we had brought them into the focus group because we wanted to find out about their neighborhoods. And without even us mentioning trash, they all universally brought it up. They talked about, we had one woman in particular who said that she would get up in the morning, go to the methadone clinic for her opioid treatment. After she recovered from that, she'd get her kids off to school, and then she'd go to work. She'd come home, she'd pick up the kids. Walking home, she'd be solicited by Johns who wanted her to hook. And then she'd get home. And the thing that really brought her down after that whole day was the trash on the street. And she said, I just wish that the trash would go away, and that would make me feel so much better. We heard about people who picking up trash was the grounding part of their life. That was like, they met their neighbors, they were trying really hard to restore connections to their community and get back on track. They knew that they had done a lot of damage. And in their recovery, they really wanted to fix that. And that keeping the stoop clean and taking care of their neighbors, keeping their neighbors' stoops clean gave them a sense of purpose and connection, and really raised their self-esteem and self-worth. So we dug into that a little bit more, and we started talking to some of those methadone clinics and other substance use clinicians to find out if this rung true for them as well, and it definitely did. So it was really easy for us to partner with them to have their clients do cleanups outside the clinic together. Their therapists, their medical support in treatment were some of the most trusted people in their worlds, and they were willing to do basically whatever those folks said to them, knowing that they were really motivated to get their lives back on track. So they started doing cleanups outside the clinic, started being reminded, when you go home, go clean up. Take a few minutes and clean up outside your house, clean up your block. Not even asking them to talk to anybody, just go do this. It's therapeutic. You might feel the same way if you clean your house, if you make your bed, if you do your dishes. It's this bringing sense of calm and order to a space that felt very disordered. We tested graphics and visuals like the ones on the screen, and the one on the right in particular, we heard a lot of comment. Often you'll see in public service advertising a reliance on the matriarch, and grandma or mom is telling you what to do because everybody respects her. We tried using a man, we tried using a father, and we got really interesting and humorous reactions from people. The men all said, it's really meaningful and powerful to me to see a man who's got his life together, who's doing his best for his kids. And this is inspiring to me. And the women said, it's great to see the men get up off their asses once in a while. It was really charming conversation, and I loved that work. So we would put this on, we'd give this to our partners in the Trash Free Baltimore effort and say, if you're going to advertise a cleanup, you don't need big fancy graphics. Just you can drop a picture like this on the top with the information for the cleanup, and then hang it where they're likely to see it. So at the clinics that we were working at, they mostly were hanging it by the elevators or outside the treatment doors. The key with the methadone clinics was really important, was that if you're in treatment, you're going almost every day for 2 years for this treatment. And then you keep going on a lesser basis for another 3 to 4 years. So these are very regular contacts that they were having and daily reminders about this practice. We found a year later, people who were still keeping with it, going out to a neighborhood and finding somebody that we had met through this work, and they were joyful. They'd gotten a job. Their lives were closer to back on track where they wanted them to be. And the neighborhood was looking cleaner, and they were starting to talk to other people, and their neighbors respected them, which surprised them. They weren't expecting that. And so I think that there's a lot of value to this. We've talked to partner agencies in DC about replicating this kind of work here. And I know that we have issues with the needle exchange programs and Narcan distribution that have been challenging in the district. And we're continuing to work on getting something like this in place here. All this goes to say that rather than focusing on a don't litter message, we can focus on a pickup message. And that can make everybody feel good, whether they were already at risk of being in that littering category because they were disconnected from their community, or if they were, they're already super community leaders like you guys, who just want to do something and be a leader on your block. And you understand, if you're also thinking about the impact of trash on waterways or higher level pollution issues. This is something that, instead of just trying to get at 5% of people, a population that is super resistant to community messages, we can be reaching everybody with a positive message and a behavior that everyone can adopt, whether they feel disconnected or not. So briefly, just running through, I want to explain how we take all of this research and apply it to the work that the Mayor's Office of the Clean City does. We understand, we really design our programs based on the needs of all of the specific audiences. Control. How do they take care, like just make sure that their trash is properly disposed of. Can you clean up your property? Just make sure that expand the space that you can control just past your front door out to the street. Make sure your sidewalk is clean. Sweep up your leaves, and keep your yard tidied up. You can work with us to find solutions. Next month, we're going to talk with staff and leadership from the Office of Unified Communications to learn more about 311 and ways that you, as adopted Black leaders, can help reduce the other challenges in your neighborhood by using 311. And then what you're doing now as adopted Black leaders in organizing others. You're out there picking up the trash in your neighborhood and you're getting other people to come with you. This is all really important work. I know that you're inspiring everyone around you as you do your work. And then being a role model, people are coming to us from other programs doing similar community leadership work. And at the same time, you are serving as a role model in your work. So we apply this through things like roll-off day, where we're just trying to get the basic trash control. Instead of illegally dumping your sofa or your TV, bring it to one of our events. These events, of course, are suspended under the public health emergency, and we hope to bring them back next year as the vaccine rolls out. We do the Mayor Bowser's spring cleanup this month. This in 2021, we hope to do it in March, virtually likely. But it's all about getting out and cleaning up the space that you care about. It can be 5 minutes in front of your house, or it can be a longer event across your neighborhood or in a park. But it's all about expanding that space that you're going to take care of. We have the Adopt a Block program, even more about how are we connecting with our neighbors and inspiring others to do this work. And if you want to go beyond cleaning up your block, we also have the Adopt Your District program. We partner with Department of Parks and Recreation, Department of Energy and Environment, and local nonprofits on adopting park space and streams in the district to keep them clean and report back data. That data, again, remember, is important as we make sure that we're meeting our federal obligations to clean up the Anacostia River of trash. So that wraps up our presentation on the behavior of littering. We've got our contact information here to reach us. Apparently I need to fix the double @ in my email address. Remember, last month we announced a new Adopt a Block website and a new site to report your cleanup data. Please check those out. You can find all of our phase 2 COVID protocols for litter cleanups on the Adopt a Block website to make sure that everyone stays safe. Thank you for all the work that you do in your neighborhood and for the district. And we look forward to seeing you next month. Have a wonderful holiday. Thank you.